Buen día, buenas tardes, buenos días a todas, a todos.
Good morning, everybody. Hello, everyone in Latin America, and also our colleagues who are with us in this cycle of web sessions in the Urban by Nature program. We are delighted to welcome you to our fourth webinar. As you know, we have been working, well, over the last few months on the agenda for the implementation of nature within urban policies. As you know, this program, Urban by Nature, is a rural program for pioneers, practitioners, and also experts from the cities, from their local governments in the agenda of urban nature. Our session today is based on the implementation of green and blue zones for more resilient cities. As we know, this agenda is fundamental, and many cities around the world, especially in Latin America, have been leveraging these blue and green ordinances to integrate them in their climate action policy. My name is Braulio Diaz. I'm Manager of Institutional Relations and Advocacy, and I have the pleasure of guiding you today through this webinar alongside my colleagues from the Metropolitan District of Quito and the World ICLEI Secretariat and the consultancy firm that is accompanying the Just Innovation Program in Quito. And I am in the city of São Paulo and working in the regional secretariat of ICLEI for South America. Like I said before, we have all 4 webinars that are opportunities to continue with the agenda in different languages. So I'm going to be speaking English, but we also have colleagues that are going to be speaking Spanish and Portuguese. And given that this is a virtual world, we all know that there's a little globe icon at the bottom of the screen on the right-hand side. If you're on your computer, you can click on the language of the audio that you'd like to hear the webinar in. For those of you who are following us from your mobile devices, you'll find 3 dots, and there on those 3 dots, you can click and select the language of your preference. Finally, my colleagues will be sending you some information via the chat. We want to have a space for questions and answers in this space. So we're going to give you this moment so that those of you who are following the webinar can speak and let us know if you have any queries in that section. So first of all, it's a pleasure to see that we've got almost 40 people on the webinar, and we're delighted to see this group of professionals, academics, politicians and technicians interested in nature-based solutions, NBSs, and to see also how this program has been growing gradually. Our webinar will be recorded, so I'll tell you more about that later. And as I was saying before, the theme for the implementation of green areas, green and blue areas for more resilient cities. In this theme, we're going to have very important interventions from cities that have already managed to implement their strategies within their policies. We're going to start this program with our colleague from the city of Milan in Italy, Emilia Baron, who is the manager of the Clever Cities project in the city of Milan. She's come from the mayor's office in Milan, and she's going to tell us how they've had experience in co-creation and the implementation of green beds in the city, including social housing. After Emilia, we'll hear Liliana Rendon Macias, from the Directorate of Urbanism and Territorial Sustainability in the city of Portoviejo in Ecuador. She's going to bring with her a perspective about how the project is being implemented, this project in the corridor for biodiversity along the Portoviejo River in the Las Vegas Park, which is an emblematic park in the city, and the whole nature-based intervention that is being performed in this territory. Finally, we also have the pleasure of being accompanied by our colleague Wellington Tohoru Nagano, who is architect and urban planner from the Mayor's Office of São Paulo. Wellington is going to give us a 360 view of how cities in São Paulo, how the city in São Paulo, so how this large city is implementing green spaces and free spaces through the municipal plan for protected areas. As I was saying before, we will have a round of questions and comments. We hope to have a little debate with any questions that you might want to put forward. And on the panel, you have a tab for questions, so please include your name and who the question is for. Now, I'm just going to give you a small reminder of what we've been doing. So, at the beginning of my presentation, I was telling you that since the month of April, we launched the inaugural event, so the Urban by Nature Hub, to think about and have discussions with different cities in Latin America and around the world, think about the integration of these nature-based solutions within municipal policies. We did this through a kick-off event led by the city of Quito, and they've also been kind of at the forefront of this program and debates. And after that, we had a series of webinars with a methodology that explains each of the stages that we have considered for the inclusion of a range of relevant factors in planning, but also in the implementation of the green and blue agenda for green and blue cities, as we call them. I'm doing a very brief summary of the steps that we have taken. The first was the step of coming together, being committed, and that's basically the manifestation of political will, so that we can express and share our experiences, and also the interest in a city in joining together, learning from peer to peer. And we know that our cities in this moment in the global south have a vision that's very decentralized, very horizontal, where we all have something to learn, but also something to contribute. And in this sense, step one has allowed us to express this commitment. Step two, so exploration, allows us to map these existing policies, plans, and regulations, and also have a kind of state of art on our agenda for blue and green cities. Step three has allowed us to prioritize, so identify through multi-actor or multi-stakeholder view the first scenarios where we need to implement action to be able to really move these blue and green strategies forward. And here we have also identified a number of measurement tools with indicators that allow us to assess progress and the evolution of the renaturalization of our territories. The fourth point is the point that we find in these sessions. So basically, the commitment to a plan. So how to move from discourse, so strategic planning, that allows us to move to action. And this is a fundamental element in the process, because it is at this point when we can truly provide legal certainty and institutional nature and financial nature to our strategies. This is basically an initial revision of our methodology with the cities that have committed to the program Urban by Nature. We are reviewing this, and in the chat, my colleagues will be providing some information about the methodology. It's available in 3 languages. And without further ado, just so we can make the most of our time here, I basically have the step that we're going to be working on today in front of us. So it's the implementation. And you'll see that this module is based on how based on these other 4 steps that are kind of more linked to territorial planning, how we can go from territorial planning to implementation. And for that, we are basically presenting a series of experiences that have showed us institutional solidity and technical and institutional capabilities for the implementation of green and blue agendas in the cities, where we can have as a kind of basis all the different visions that our colleagues are going to present to us. So in that sense, so we've got the other phases of the methodology, which we'll see in the following webinars. I won't stop to focus on this, but I think we can move on to the next slide. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to stop here because I want to make the most of this time so that we can have the best experience possible. So I'd like to give the floor to our colleague from the city of Milan, who is in charge of the Clever Cities project management, Emilia Barone, who's going to present about how they are co-creating the NBSs, the nature-based solutions, in the city of Milan. So, dear Emilia, you have 10 minutes for your first presentation. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Voy a presentar en
Thank
inglés.
you very much. I'm going to present in English.
Claro que sí.
Of course, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can hear you perfectly well.
Good. My name is Emilia Barone. I work with the city of Milan. I'm actually, at the moment, I'm coordinating this project that is called Clever Cities for the city of Milan. It is actually a project, European project financed by the European Commission under the Horizon funds. And aside from Milan, there's also London, Hamburg implementing MBS and other cities all over Europe, and not only in Europe, but also in South America. And you will see what we are doing in Milan. So we have 3 labs, 3 clever action labs, which are distributed in the south of Milan. And the reason why they are in the south of Milan, because the south of Milan is going through a total renovation, and also because it has a huge focus on social inclusion as well, because of some problems related to the urban distribution there. So we are working on these 3 action labs, and the first one aims at giving a better awareness about green walls and green roofs, and disseminating these solutions all over Milan, not just in the south of Milan, but also in the rest of the city. And what you see in this slide is the first implementation that we did, which is this green wall that we did in Giambellino 121. And it was the result of a co-design process. What is the co-design process? It means that the final results is the result of the participation of the stakeholders that we met, that would be interesting in participating. And there are typically people that actually work and live in the area, and that would be interesting in taking part in the co-design process. So this is the result of the first green wall. We actually had the possibility of having a long list of experts that we selected that is now available for all citizens to select their green expert to implement their green walls or green roofs, depending on the decision that they want to implement, on the thing they want to implement. Then there's the other implementation that we finished is in Ponti. It's a foundation there that is actually working with people with mental disabilities and elderly people. And aside from the fact that now you just see the green roof, but there's also other implementations that are going to be finished in a couple of months, and they're going to grow, produce, and have other activities related to the green. And we're going to monitor that, the roof, not only from the environmental point of view, the benefits of when it comes to pollution reduction and heat waves, but also from a social point of view. That is one main point of the Clever City project, monitoring the well-being and the social benefits of these solutions, the MBS solutions that we are implementing. Another one is in progress. It's not actually implemented quite yet, but it is going to be a huge project that will include the social housing. And there will be 4 towers that will be completely renovated through MBS, not only through MBS, but other green solutions as well. And they're going to have also social goals, such as they're going to, as well here, they're going to grow vegetables and also have bees and social activities, and eventually they're going to use the produce for self-consumption, but also for selling the produce. So maybe they're going to have a small economy based on that. Then the second lab that we are working on is Giambellino 129, which is a park, and it's been 3 years now that we've been working on co-designing the park and specific areas of the park. And if you can see on the right, there are a selection of trees and green solution MBS. So they are actually being selected through these co-design. Also involved in the co-implementation, which means, implementing, actually planting plants. And we're actually looking into some kind of agreements with the residents to also maintain and manage the area. We have other experience in other parts of the cities, but that would be the first experiment that will include MBS. So it's also new for the city of Milan. And last but not least, this is the third lab, which is the Tibaldi train stop. And this is one of a kind in Milan, and the first experience as well here, which has MBS in the station. They're going to have a waiting area that is completely green, also green walls, and they're going to have noise barriers, which are going to be covered in green. And even this station is going to be co-managed and co-maintained by university, which is the Bocconi University. That they are they are actually looking in finalizing an agreement with the university. And we are also involving the municipality 5, which is the local municipality, to make sure that even residents and associations can take part in managing this kind of solutions. Now, we have other interventions that we are exploring, because during the process of co-designing, of course, there are lots of inputs from the people that are participating. And one of the inputs that we thought was one of the most interesting ones is the one that is regarding this school. And we decided to work on the school garden and implement MBS there as well, which will include a co-design phase with the teachers and the families, and also using also MBS to cover up, to transform this bin there into a recycler part for the market of the place. And then this is a little some pictures of what we've been doing for the co-design process. So if you can see, there was a huge participation and involvement during the co-design, co-creating process and the co-design phases. And what we learned, some of the lessons learned that we have so far collected are, obviously, there's some of them that are positive, that will include, of course, something that we will bring as for the future, because co-creating a green wall and a green roof with citizens actually improves the sense of belonging and community. And also, they actually feel more committed, because committed stakeholders that are engaged in this process feel more committed also in the long term. While for the negative parts, for the lesson learned, there's some things that you have to keep in mind. At least for us, it was really important to have a structural assessment prior to the implementation of the MBS, because that's something that actually stopped the implementation. Because of course there are some costs that you have to face for the structural to put in place with the structure of the building itself, and some of the people that actually lived in the buildings did not want to face that kind of expense. So this is something that you have to keep in mind before actually funding or actually wanting to do this kind of work on buildings. And then, of course, there are some procedural obstacles and delays. Some of them are actually inside the public administration itself. And this is something that you have to work on to actually facilitate and to make the process smoother and to actually foster the process itself. And another thing that for the co-implementation and for the co-creation itself is really important is communication. So what we did in Milan was actually building a communication and a website specifically for citizens in Milan, and actually worked quite a bit, because we use it in many occasions to communicate with people and involve them in the co-creation path. And these are the unexpected outcomes that we had during the path, and some of them were actually really, really positive, because, for instance, we were invited to speak at the Senate of the Italian Republic about a bill for urban regeneration. And also there's the possibility of replicating those solutions in other situations, for instance, for the green wall that I showed you. And we actually had a great media coverage. So everybody was very aware in Milan about the Clever Cities project and what the aims of the project are. Well, for the negative part, we have acts of vandalism, unfortunately, and some longer bureaucratic authorizations that we did not expect at the beginning of the project. And that's it for me. I think I stayed in the 10 minutes.
You really did. Thank you very much, Emilia. And well, perhaps there we have some time to have question answer here we have in the chat. Well, I have one concrete question for you, is that which are the next steps after these two pilots? Do you find that the municipality has really the interest on ensuring more and more of these actions into the public policy? Do this also is something that you are trying to fit in the public buildings? So what are your expectations about these two first walls?
It is a very interdisciplinary path. It's not just related to the urban regeneration department of the city of Milan, because it also involves the green department, the housing department. It involves a lot of departments in the city of Milan, but the orientation of the whole administration is towards it's actually going towards that direction. They're going to try and implement and actually using norms to facilitate the adoption of this kind of solutions, but it's not a very fast process. It will be a long process because of some even some norms that are related to the municipality itself. For instance, you saw the green wall. The green wall is actually something that we are very proud of, and people stop and take pictures there, and they really the people of the neighborhood are really happy with it. But the transport company that actually implemented that has to pay a tax for the occupation of public soil of the pavement, which is a contradiction, because on one hand, you facilitate that kind of solutions, and then you make people pay taxes for that. So there's a number of things that we have to work on to facilitate and actually foster this kind of process and this kind of solutions. One other thing could be actually helping people assess the buildings if they are prior to the implementation of the solutions, because sometimes they might want to implement a green roof that can be used by the residents, but there are some constraints, so they're not allowed. So those things actually need to be put together and solved somehow.
Thank you, Emilia. And there is also your intervention was mainly focused on co-creation and multi-stakeholder engagement. And there is a question from Geoffrey. He's asking, and how do you, there is a method to create these impactful MBS projects together with the citizens? I guess this experience has bring you a lot of the pulse of the territory. How do you see that? How do you see citizen engagement?
We actually approached this work in a very scientific way, because we applied the co-creation guidelines, and we followed the steps that are in the co-creation guidelines that was developed by the Polytechnic of Milan. We used this guidance and we applied it. According to the different steps, we followed the guidelines, at least in Milan, that's what we did. So for every step, we managed to find the tool. We had a set of tools to apply. And we actually use, we thought what was useful at the moment, because also we had to face COVID during that time. And some of the implementations of the activities that we planned were on, that were in presence, while we couldn't do it in presence. So we had to use the internet and have meetings online and all those things. But people, at least in Milan, were very interested in participating. Milan has a long tradition of participating in activities that are related to the regeneration of the cities or community-wise. So it wasn't really a problem to involve people.
Well, thank you very much, Emilia. We would be delighted if you could also share with us this methodology that you mentioned of the university. And now I would give the floor. I'm going to change to Spanish to our Latin American representatives. And I will give the floor to Liliana Rendon Macias, who is an environmental manager at the Directorate of Urbanism and Territorial Sustainability in the city of Portoviejo, Ecuador. Liliana, tienes 10 minutos para tu presentación.
Liliana, you have 10 minutes for your presentation, and then we will continue with some interventions. Thank you very much, and thank you.
Thanks to Daval, who has already shared with us this platform of UNDESA to change the perspective on urbanization. Yes, you're right. There is also always this notion that climate change cities have a lot of responsibility in the emissions. But this is how we are dealing with it, and biodiversity is one of the alternatives we have been exploring, and this UBN hub is discussing around this. So, adelante, Liliana, te dejo con esta intervención primera.
Hola, muy buenos días.
Hello, very good morning to you all. Thank you very much for this space in which we can share our experiences, the experiences that we've had surrounding the implementation of nature-based solutions, particularly with the corridor of the Portoviejo River project. Before we begin, we would like to let you know that within the framework of this project called Horizonte 2020 or Horizon 2020, funded by the European Union, we also have a line of research, and the aim of that line of research, the main aim, is to aid cooperation at the global level with Europe. And so there's a focus on sustainable urban planning through nature-based solutions for the renaturalization of urban ecosystems. And so there's been cooperation between Asia and Europe, and also cooperation between Latin America and Europe. And in these two different projects, one of them is Connexus for cities and metropolis, which have taken place in cities like São Paulo or Bogota, among others. And then you have more intermediary cities, such as the city of Portoviejo, which is under that classification, where we have been performing the project Interlace that Portoviejo is part of. The Interlace project is international cooperation, as I mentioned before, and it seeks to restore urban areas both in Latin America and Europe, with the aim of empowering and equipping Latin American and European cities so that they can restore and rehabilitate their urban ecosystems in their cities through green areas. In the case of Latin America, we are part of the LI, and this is why we are constantly participating in this project, which is funded for 4 years. At the same time, I'd like to specify that at the bottom there are different logos from different NGOs and institutions, both at the scientific level and also for preservation and conservation, that allow us to coordinate and work with a participatory approach, exchanging experiences and knowledge to look for solutions that can be applied to nature in the territory. So just to tell you a little bit about how we are set up at the institutional level, this process that we are undertaking is in the framework of our main planning instrument, which is the territorial planning plan. called Portoviejo 2035. This plan has a model for a sustainable and resilient city, which precisely implies that different considerations from taking the urban footprint and also looking at projections about the footprint for 2035. At the same time, this proposal is a new structure that basically guides, orientates the culture and the growth of this city, promoting a 15-minute city. So a city that is active and economically feasible as well. At the same time, this proposal, or this plan rather, takes into consideration within the approach of focusing on recovering urban ecosystems, a new vision. So with this new vision, the aim is to ensure that these systems connect cities, but also consider green systems and green areas and equipment for this. And so green infrastructure is mainly based on the cantons, the peri-urban areas, and obviously green spaces as a more general network. This general network of green spaces is an ecosystem. As I said, we have 3 different ones, so cantons, peri-urbans, and comprehensive green spaces. And through the Portoviejo River, we have contemplated the pier of the Portoviejo River and also the hills of Portoviejo through the green corridors that will connect and be coordinated through the implementation of green infrastructure and a green system through parks, increasing these public spaces. And this all leads to risk mitigation, climate change mitigation at a human scale through the implementation of MBSs that will allow us to recover the ecosystems for these 3 large elements. And obviously, this would imply, so this focus of nature-based solutions requires the recovery of natural ecosystems and the mitigation of risks caused by threats. But this is basically being done with an approach on connecting with nature and different places and people as well. As you can see in this case, we have the Portoviejo River, which we're working on. So we're on in the first stage. We are implementing solutions and green infrastructure in the Las Vegas Park, and this has basically meant that through this public space, citizens can feel more involved with a sense of belonging of these new spaces. And I just wanted to also tell you how this connection was created, or this relationship between the city of Portoviejo and the river. So the city is the capital of the province of Manatí. There are around 320,000 inhabitants in this area in the city, so it's an intermediary city. This is the river in the city, so it basically crosses from the north to the south for the whole city of Portoviejo, so right through the middle. It basically possesses great biodiversity richness with a lot of potential for landscape development. It has 44 kilometers in length, and in this case, it is also shared. There are basins in other cantons. So in this case, it is born from the Portoviejo side in the mountains, and it goes out into the Pacific Ocean. So it has a very important part, which is a beach with our rich mangrove ecosystem. Some of the main problems that we see in the river, as you can see here, towards the more complex part, in fact, is deforestation due to construction, real estate, also, let's say, clandestine landfill, the accumulation of sediments as well. We also have an issue linked to deforestation due to farming activities for different reasons, so mismanagement of the river, which has led to the loss of native habitats as well, and also human settlements because of the risk of flooding. So that's been one of the issues that we have basically seen at all points in time in Portoviejo. Also the flow of the river has been strangled, so there's a complete disconnect between the city and the river. And this here is basically just to show you an image of how things are going in this specific part of the city, so the urban part. Basically, how the river has been encroached upon, strangled almost, because of the real estate pressures. So this has been a big problem, especially when we have rainy season. There tends to be a huge impact with flooding in this area. On the other hand, and with regards to human settlements and flooding issues, when it comes to the corridor of the river, we have seen that there are around 37,400 inhabitants, 484 inhabitants in these high-risk areas. So this is showing us how during high season, during rainy season, there tends to be flooding that completely collapses, forces the city to collapse. At the same time, and also considering that a number of studies have been performed. In fact, one of the most important ones that I mentioned at the beginning was the fact that the plan is considering projections in urban planning, and this study basically gave us another alert, because if we don't do something before 2025, then the different causes, the different issues that occur, things like a very sparse city, problems with the ecosystem, a loss of productive soil as well, the lack of infrastructure, the increase in human settlements, among others, then this can lead to these huge red stains if we do not implement measures. So how do we challenge these, or how do we address these challenges rather, that we mentioned before? So the plan has, and also, let's say we've made use of the instruments and how we find different topics about green spaces in these tools. So basically what we have done is work on green ecosystems, whilst the projections for the construction, with the projections for construction through parks, and this is basically along the corridor of the river, which is made up of 7 parks. So the total of these parks is 218 acres executed. So by 2025, we have contemplated that each of these works will be contemplated within their phases, which also require a process of searching for the right space. So this structure, this infrastructure, will allow for one of the main actions where we're going to try to control flooding. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about how we have been working on the first part that's been executed, the first park that's been executed, the Las Vegas Park. Okay, you have 2 more minutes just to let you know. It's been very interesting, this presentation, but we have very little time. Okay, this image is the park, as you can see. So it's quite a large surface. That's 10.5 acres. It used to be used as a place where they would throw construction waste. In fact, it's part of the landfill site that was generated by the earthquake in 2016. One particularity is that it's an infrastructure that's used for controlling flooding in areas that are affected. And through this park, the idea is to be able to increase the square meters for inhabitants from 2.50 to 14 meters per inhabitant. Generally speaking, this is showing us how this measure has been designed to reduce flooding. So we can see the parameters in the past about flooding in dry season and rainy season. So we've got moderate, depending on the season, sometimes it's quite heavy.
Entonces, bueno, básicamente a través de infraestructura, que es a
And
través de
so
ciertos
basically through these different levels, you can achieve 38.5 meters above sea level. So this design can really generate these conditions. So it's like a drainage system that allows us to manage floods and be more manage floods and be more sustainable. So this dam has allowed us to control flooding a bit better, and the idea is for the population around this area to be less affected and for the impact to be minimized. And then for Las Vegas Park, we're basically considering widening it, extending it. As you can see, this is the extension we intend to create to make the economy dynamic and the city dynamic, and also to improve services for citizens. So the idea is to create this park, Park Las Vegas and Park Las Vegas 2, and the second park will be the Park Mame, which connects to this one, and so that's basically what we're going to be working on. Park Mame is under its final studies, but we're looking to coordinate with different organizations to be able to continue into the second phase. So they also have other kinds of tourist activities and new spaces for culture, art and entertainment. So I hope I didn't go over the time, but thank you very much for this space and this time, and we hope that our experiences can also be considered in all of this knowledge of exchange with other countries. Thank you. Liliana, thank you very much. I think this example shows a great sense of integrated planning on one hand, and also the sensitivity of working within an emergency framework. And so it's basically a city, a mayor's office that works hand in hand with people in the territory. It works on this territory in climate emergencies. And I think these are the kinds of solutions that can be emblematic to be known at the national and international level, and other cities, as we can see in this chat. Our colleagues have been inspired, and they can be inspired by Portoviejo. And I think it's true that the challenge has not finished yet. The plan has not ended, so I think it's important for it to be expanded to other cities. Okay, I don't want to close yet. I think you've given us lots of ideas for reflection. I think it also complements the previous presentation quite well, shared to us by our colleague from Milan. The documents have been shared with us. Emilia has also shared the documents. I'd like to give the floor to our colleague from the city of São Paulo, Wellington, who is also an expert in the creation of green spaces within the different areas of the territory of the city of São Paulo. So Wellington, you have 10 minutes. So thank you very much. Gracias, Braulio. Thank you, Paulo. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see my colleagues and Wellington Architect from the Secretariat and Directorate of Urban Projects. And we're working on the implementation of this project and the management of linear parks. I want to show you a case that we have been working on permanently. It's very common. It's linked to the challenges of implementing in the peripheral ideas in the peripheral area. Can you see my screen? Okay, great.
Município com
This is
12
São
milhões
Paulo.
de habitantes, a sua mancha urbana
The municipality has 12 million inhabitants. It's a metropolitan urban area with 22 million inhabitants. We're talking about a city with the population of many cities in Europe. So of the whole of Argentina, for example. And this occupancy in Sao Paulo in the last 70 years, with regards to urbanization, has generated very difficult environmental problems, the occupation of mountains and parks, and not just leading to environmental problems, but also social problems and land planning issues, a lack of access to water, for example, a lack of housing, good and decent housing, a lack of mobility, precarious public utilities, a lack of public spaces, and in the face of this typical situation in the outskirts of Sao Paulo, in 2002 in the strategic plan of Sao Paulo, they have included linear parks as an instrument for intervention in the territory. And we were already talking about the interinstitutional character of this project. It's not just about having linear parks or green spaces. The idea is to bring in other sectoral policies that can be coordinated and linked to the territory, such as health, housing, and sewage services. So in 2006, we started a linear park program, so 36 for the whole of Sao Paulo, 8.5 million square meters, so which is equal to more or less 2 Central Parks, Central Park in New York. And this program was widened and it's been incorporated in the Sim Parques program, where the idea was to triple the amount of parks up until 2012. And then 2014 was the last strategy plan that we had. The instrument of linear parks was basically the work of the Green Secretariat and part of the urban projects that it performed. So we had the program of linear parks of 2006, for which we had 36 proposals, 20 of those were implemented and were put in conflict areas, regions where there are conflicts, environmental conflicts. So the northern area for the urban context, and then in the west for the flooding that takes place due to the basin of Birajusara, and then the blue area, the characteristic there is to preserve water services, and then in the eastern part, the idea is to avoid flooding in the river, so the main river Viete, not just for Sao Paulo, but also the whole state of Sao Paulo. So it's not the main river for only the city, but for the state. There's a park that's been very important and it has allowed us to address the territory in different ways through co-creation and local co-management through the Braniteci local park, 46,000 square meters, a kilometer wide of river what has been recovered. So it's almost like a kind of stream. It's a small part. It's a stream that is part of a project. What is the Cantareira? It's called. It's the beginning of a complex of green areas that's much bigger to control urban expansion and to reorganize the housing there. What was this stream like before? There was very poor housing next to it, lots of waste, lots of sewage, a risk of landslides. So lots of
ruas
waste being placed along the whole park, a lack of urban planning. There were really precarious streets. The bus couldn't go through. Sometimes the ambulance or the dump trucks were unable to transit through the cities. And this is basically the situation that this park was in. So all the dark grey parts are the precarious houses that were posing a risk. They were all removed. They were relocated elsewhere. You also have, so basically in different buildings, and a linear park was built in this area, which allows for territorial coordination of the region of Brasilandia, in which the park is located. Before implementing this park, we basically imagined that it wasn't just green works that were necessary, it was also an opportunity to take sanitation, drains, the recovery of the stream, and also infrastructure to this place. So when we started to channel the stream and recover and create roads, we were able to take infrastructure there, and that's what this park was about. So taking a huge amount of elements from the formal city, an organized city, so to speak, to the outskirts. Because when we work with the community, their priorities are very immediate. So employment, housing, transport.
Questão ambiental é lá embaixo.
There are lots of needs in the community, and sometimes they see that the environmental issue is not as important as these other issues. And at the Green Secretariat, we want to show them that the environment and environmental issues actually bring improvements to the area. So now we have a park that's used as the main public space for the population. So it's a place where the community can walk around, children can play. They can play with balls and kites. They can meet together. This is a normal scene, and children didn't have a place to play before or a place to walk. Now they can interact with the river. So we have a process of environmental education where people observe the river. And it's no longer the river that made people feel scared during rainfall season or because of floods. It's now part of the environment. There are other opportunities, and it's used for leisure, for walks that are organized by the health units. People can walk around for half an hour, 40 minutes without experiencing any issues, and people can basically get to their schools much quicker. We calculate that they can get there in 20 minutes. So we managed to reduce the time that children were taking to get to school, and they saved time for activities and for things that they could do with their families. And we also made the most of this opportunity to have educational campaigns. We talked to agents of the territory in schools as well as health centers, community leaders, to be able to clean the park. We sent messages, educational messages about not throwing waste because it can go to the sewers and block them. And we basically wanted to tell all the citizens about the park and give them environmental education. We also save animals, we help animals, we work with schools for very specific activities linked to environmental education. And here we are basically planting a grove or like a garden, a vegetable garden. There's also a part of the park that's used for raising awareness about health. There are other events here, so community services and other events. Rowley says that we have no more time left. Okay, Wellington says that we have also training that we provide for employees. They feel highly valued. Many of them, in fact, received the first diploma they'd ever received in their lives. They feel like they're part of this park. This is the park before and after. And this is what we imagine for our park. So basically planning through public policy, community participation, and the restructuralization of the territory. So we need to read this place and really reflect on reference projects that can be applied or maybe can't. We also need to apply strategies to this place, and we're talking about public works as well. In precarious contexts like São Paulo, you have to have a lot of adaptability. You have to build together with the community. So the community has to understand that it's not public works only, it's works that in which the community needs to be involved, and we need to bring the community and involve them on a daily basis and add subsidies for the project as well. And so in the image we can see how the park relates to its environment and how it's an intermediary between urban areas and the environment. So thank you very much, and forgive me for taking a bit more time. Thank you very much, says Paulo. I think your presentation makes a lot of sense, and it allows us to include all of these initiatives for co-creation and planning, and not just a linear service, but also a circular service, because it's all involved with the environment and the surroundings. Okay, I think we're coming to the end of this webinar, and I want to show you a few tips for the next events that we're going to have. As you all know, this was webinar number 4. We have been also scheduled for another session, which will be on Thursday, 9th of February, 2023. So you will receive an invitation in your inbox, or email. Webinar number 5 will be focused on steps 6 and 7 of the methodology, which we are sharing with you. And it will address monitoring and replication of the MBSs. And it gives us an idea of scalability and how to replicate the implementations that are being made in the different territories. I think that all the implementation experiences were highly enriched. All 3 cities are fantastic cities. We provide all the tools, like the recordings of these sessions, so that you can see what we're working on for the next few months. And I also want to invite you so that your city can be part of this platform, Urban by Nature. This platform allows us to share and position the initiatives of each city with regards to all the global goals. As you know, in a few days, in December, the Global Biodiversity Summit will take place, in which a new global compact for 2020 will be approved by the member states, which will generate many implications for cities. Therefore, we want evidence of what's being done around the world linked to nature-based solutions, and how this helps us build a local perspective that can generate impact at the global level. And so we're going to end the session here. I'd like to leave a link in the chat for all of you. And we're going to have a small survey for you there. So please fill in the survey, and we'll also be sending you the video, the recording of this final session. It will be uploaded to the platform I'd like to make the most of these last minutes to thank all the panelists and all our colleagues from the offices in Europe and from the Global Secretariat, as well as our GEF consultancy colleagues and our colleagues from the Mayor's Hall of Quito for leading this space. So thank you very much, and we'd like to wish you all an excellent day. Thank you very much. And
Thank
we'll
you.
be in touch. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Gracias.